to introduce Bill Treasurer, the Chief Encouragement Officer, the CEO of Giant Leap Consulting, and author of Courage Goes to Work, an internationally best-selling book that pioneered the new management practice of courage building. Bill is also the author of Courageous Leadership, a do-it-yourself courage-building training program published by Wiley Publishing. Bill's newest book, Leaders Open Doors, holds a 5-star rating on Amazon with over 50 stellar reviews. Notably, 100% of the royalties from sales of Leaders Open Doors are being donated to programs that support children with special needs. Bill has worked with thousands of executives in places such as Singapore, Tokyo, Hong Kong, Zurich, London, and Sydney. Next Friday, he actually leaves for Abu Dhabi. Bill's clients include NASA, Saks Fifth Avenue, UBS Bank, Accenture, Hugo Boss, Spanx, the CDC, and the U.S. Veterans Administration hospitals. Today, Bill is going to share ideas and insights from his first book, Right Risk. The book which was endorsed by leadership gurus Ken Blanchard and Dr. Stephen Covey, provides practical tips for taking smart risks. Please join me in welcoming Bill Treasurer.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. How are you? Good. It's good to be with you. I'm on the road all the time, so it's good to be able to come back to Asheville and spend some time in Asheville. I see some friendly faces, folks that I know and such, so I'm really looking forward to being able to spend time with you today, talking about risk-taking. Later this afternoon, I fly to Huntsville, Alabama, and tomorrow I'll be working at the Marshall Space Center with NASA. So it's nice to be off the road a little bit and get to spend time with you. My aim today is to share some thoughts and ideas with you about how to take smart risks so that you can use it as you get ready to go forth into your career. Some of you may be in your career already, but I would venture to say that many of you are in that preparation stage where you're getting ready to go out and be in full force in the career world. So hopefully I'll be able to provide you with some ideas, insights, approaches that then you can take in your own careers. Since I'm home, and this is my hometown crowd, I hope it's okay with you if I share some new stories. I'm going to share some stories that I've never told before. First of all, because I like to get out and take a risk myself and sort of embody the message. But also because I think that the stories are relevant to the topic of risk-taking. This is not my signature topic. A lot of times I talk about courage building in the workplace, but it's very related to the idea of courage because risk-taking, courage can be thought of as risk in action. So with that in mind, I want to drain the agenda very quickly. Here's what we're going to talk about today. I'm going to cover what's your move? What is it that you're considering by way of risk-taking? Next, I'm going to share with you a dumb career move that I made and then how I made up for it. I'm going to share with you some ideas around movers and shakers, people who have made a career out of using risk to their benefit. I'm going to talk about a really important concept called purposeful discomfort and how discomfort is something that should aid your career. And then finally, at the end of the session, and I hope along the way as well, I'll share with you some tips and ideas to help you get ready to take smarter risks as you get ready to go into your careers. With that in mind, and I'm going to step away from the microphone, and I'm from New York originally, so I think my voice is loud enough that you can hear me. I'm going to do a quick survey because it's always a good idea to find out who's in the audience and where they're starting from and what their perspective on the topic is. So with that in mind, I'm going to do a quick survey. No number 2 pencils or anything like that. Here's how it works. It's a human survey. I'm going to ask a series of questions. If you can answer yes to the question, in other words, you've had that experience, I want you to stand up. Then I'll say thank you, and you'll sit back down. It's kind of like the game Simon Says. Here's the first question. If you understood the directions to the human survey, please stand up. Good, thank you. Now the first official question. If you've ever gotten a speeding ticket while driving to school or work, please stand up. All right. Thank you. If, and let's be honest, you regularly send text messages while driving, please stand up. Oh, yes. All right. Thank you. If you possess a full carry gun permit, please stand up. There we go, right there. Those are our students from Texas right there. Thank you. Thank you. If you've ever taken a career risk that for a little while puts your career in jeopardy, please stand up. Thank you. If you've ever been described as, or would describe yourself as, controlling, please stand up. Thank you. If you absolutely love to be controlled by people, please stand up. Yeah, I didn't think so. Let's see. If you've ever left one job before having secured a different job, in other words, you were in between the trapeze, if you ever left the job before you had secured the other job, please stand up. Thank you. If you've ever made a geographic move on behalf of a company, in other words, you moved for a job, please stand up. Thank you. If you've ever strongly disagreed with a customer but bit your lip and didn't say a word, please stand up. Wow. Thank you. If you've ever strongly disagreed with a boss but bit your lip and didn't say a word, please stand up. Thank you. If, unlike former President Bill Clinton, you did inhale, please stand up. Thank you. If you lied on the last question because you were too self-conscious, please stand up. Let's see. If you ever spent a night in jail, please stand up. There we go, right there. Thank you. Thank you. Last question. If you have at least one career risk that you've always wanted to take, but thus far have not, please stand up. Thank you, and give yourselves a hand for doing the human survey. If we look at the information that you just gave me in that survey as data points, what can it tell us about the idea of risk-taking and risk avoiding? What are some insights that we could glean from that snapshot of data that we just took of you all? I've got all day. What reflections do you have after seeing that or experiencing it? Yes?
Some people took the risk to stand up.
Some people took the risk to stand up.
And so they might not have, in another situation, they might not have admitted to it.
Some people took the risk to stand up even when it was questionable as to whether it was safe to do so. I honestly believe that there are many more people that have inhaled than actually stood up. But we get to a place where how much am I willing to reveal? Is it a risk for me to step out and be vulnerable in that way? On the other hand, some people were like, this is who I am. I'm standing, I own everything of mine and I'm not ashamed of it or afraid of it. Here it is, right? So we have a different calibration for that. What else can we infer by how we answered the questions? Did anybody not stand up for any question at all? Did anybody stand up for all the questions? What does it tell us about risk?
Some people take more risks than others.
Some risks are safer than others.
Some people take more risks than others.
Some take more risks than others. Here's the deal. I'm going to talk a little bit about risk-taking today. You are all risk takers. You have all taken risks in your life. And that doesn't stop. Believe me, you're going to have to take many risks in the course of your career, especially if you want to have a fulfilling career. And if you want to be relevant in the workforce. The worst thing you can be in the workforce is irrelevant. It's the death knell to a career. If you want to have high relevancy, you're going to have to take risks and have an appetite for risks. All of us are risk takers in this room. And all of us are risk avoiders too. There are some things that we avoid on purpose. There are some things that just aren't safe for us that might be safe for somebody else. My grandmother was born of strong Southern Irish stock. She could speak to a person who was wealthy or in authority and tell them like it was. She had backbone when it came to asserting herself. But my grandmother never learned how to drive a car because that's where she felt vulnerable, taking physical risks. My brother, for those inhalers in the room, is a special agent in the DEA. And he's right outside. Come on in, Doug. He really is. and he runs and guns in the streets of Charleston, South Carolina. He's a pretty macho guy, carries a gun on his ankle when he goes to work. He's got a Glock. But my brother has a hard time telling me and our two sisters that he loves us. I know that he does, but for him, that's a risky thing, that vulnerability. Vulnerability for some people is a risk. So all of us are risk takers and all of us are risk avoiders. So if you thought that you weren't a risk taker coming into the session, please know that you are. And if you prided yourself on being such a magnificent risk taker, please know that maybe you're not as much as you thought. All right, so here's what I'd like you to do. I want to make sure that today is interactive, a little bit fun. I'd like you to have a 2-minute conversation with a person next to you. And here's the questions. What drew you to a session on career risk taking? And what career risks are you considering? I'm going to give you a very generous 120 seconds. Clap once if you can hear me. Clap twice if you can hear me. Clap 3 times if you can hear me. Is there anyone who might be willing to share the career risk that they're considering? I know, it's risky, right? Here we are on a risk-taking session, and we're like afraid to stand up, please, if you will. And your name is?
Constantine.
Hey, Constantine, nice to see you.
Well, I'm planning on starting up my own business from home pretty much, so it's big risk. Talk about all that stuff.
Yeah, that was actually a question that I was going to ask in the human survey, and I forgot to ask that question. So what is the business, if you don't mind my asking?
Well, I'm first looking at more of computer services, but I might branch out from that.
Okay. And why do you want to be in computer services?
I don't go on computer. I like helping people with computer problems, and that's why I'm going with computer information major.
How come you want to do that as opposed to go and work for a big, IT integration company?
That's helping that company, not people that need the help.
Okay, so you want to work a little closer to the customer and such, and you think you might be good at that?
I think so.
Okay, terrific. Thank you for sharing. Is anybody else who cares to share on the risks that they might be considering? How about some brave person from this side of the room? There we go. What's your name?
Cody Sluger.
Cody,
I've considered residential real estate redevelopment.
To start your own business.
Absolutely, as an LLC. I do know that involves a lot of money though, and it's hard to take a leap of faith.
It's hard
Knowing
to take
that
that
you
leap
could
of faith.
gain everything or lose everything.
Okay, fair enough. But thank you both for sharing the examples of maybe stepping out on your own, which would be one expression of risk-taking. And it's one that I have experienced. I'm going to share with you a dumb career move that I made. We'll probably circle back to the idea of the entrepreneur as risk-taker here in a few minutes. I had a really great job when I got out of graduate school. I got a job in Atlanta, Georgia with a company called Executive Adventure. Pretty cool stuff. We were doing high ropes courses and ground-based initiatives and facilitating sessions with, mostly overweight, balding, white male executives. And then we would take them outside and do ropes courses with them and such. And it was really very gratifying for me. I got to work in a polo shirt and khakis and got to have very meaningful, depthful conversation with people who tended to avoid those kind of conversations. But by having these outdoor initiatives, it would broker or it would sort of puncture the ability to have an enriching conversation. And I would get to facilitate those. And it was a really cool job. And after about 3 years, I had realized that graduate school had prepared me for more than that, and I was starting to become too specialized in just team building and just experiential team building. And there was so much more I wanted to do. And somebody told me that Anderson Consulting was interviewing up at UGA, and they thought that I might be good for it because there was a practice called the change management practice. It was human performance and change management. And this was really exciting to me because I had studied organizational development. And I had done my thesis on leadership in times of downsizing. And so I applied for it, and I went through the interview process. And I went on that first interview, and these were people who were dressed differently than me. They spoke in a more refined manner than I did. They went to better colleges than I went to. They would interview me at these posh restaurants, and then they'd bring me to their boss or senior executive, and it was very intimidating. I was very intimidated by this job. I was really fearful. I wanted it. I kind of wanted it because I knew it would set up the rest of my career. But I was really fearful of, could I do it? Could I even be successful in this kind of environment? It was an up or out kind of environment where you knew you were going to be working at a minimum 50 hours a week, but 70-hour weeks were not unheard of. So I went through the hoops. I remember the last interview and the third interview, and it was at the City Grill in Atlanta, and we had creme brulee after our meal, and we dined over, would you like some cappuccino? And yes, of course, I'll have some cappuccino. And then they took me up to see a guy named Tony Clancy, who was a senior partner there. And even as they were walking up to his office, you could tell that they were like in awe but afraid of this guy, like they were intimidated by this boss person. And then I met him, and he was an intimidating guy. And I came out of the experience thinking, you know what, this is too good for me. I'm too afraid that I won't be successful. Here's a risk that I really want to take, but I don't know that I have the competency for it. And I don't want to take this risk and lose this job that I really like but doesn't pay enough and I've outgrown. This is safe for me. Moving over here could set up my career for the rest of the career, but it's unsafe for me. And I declined the job opportunity. Over here I was making about, $30,000, and this was already a carrot for like $50,000. And I declined the opportunity. And I felt like hell. I felt really bad about it. And for a year and a half, I went back to Executive Adventure, did more team building programs, graduated to vice president of the company, was doing more team building programs than anybody else, ended up facilitating 300 team building programs. But I looked at this situation over here and almost pined for it like a girlfriend that you let go of, that you really want to get back. And so I reapproached Anderson Consulting, and I wrote Tony Clancy a letter, and I said, I've been rethinking my declining of the opportunity before, and if you all put me through the interview process, I will accept the job. I will tell you here and now, I will accept the job. I don't know what happened on that day that Tony Clancy got the letter, but they initiated the interview process again. They made me go through 4 more interviews. By the time I did accept my job at Anderson Consulting, which is one of the largest, most respected technology consulting companies in the world, and it became Accenture while I was there. They are a $30 billion company. They employ 150,000 people. And I accepted the job after those 8 interviews. And it has made all the difference in my career. The reason I declined it was self-consciousness. and fear and latching on too much to safety. I had to let go of this safe trapeze and be untethered and then grab onto this trapeze to find out what was in store for me. Maybe I wasn't ready at that moment in time, and then maybe I had become ready at this moment in time. And I spent 6 years there, and it made all the difference in my career and ended up far exceeding the salary that I had made at Executive Adventure. Now, you would have thought that I would have known something about risk-taking the first time. You would have thought that maybe I would have evaluated it differently, especially when you consider what I used to do for a living that had a lot of risk involved with it. And here's what I used to do before Executive Adventure and Accenture. For 7 years, I was a member of the U.S. high diving team. I used to travel the world, diving from heights that scaled to over 100 feet, traveling at speeds in excess of 50 miles an hour before hitting a small pool that was 10 feet deep. I used to be 6'4", but all the impact shrunk me like I am today. But here's the thing, I'm a high diver who's afraid of heights. I started out with a profound fear of heights. When I was a little kid, my dad took my brother and I to the top of the Empire State Building. And my brother, who's younger than I am, was at the edge of the Empire State Building looking down at the metropolis below with my dad. And I was pressed up against the Empire State Building, petrified with fear. And it was like the first time it registered for me that we're not all the same in terms of what we're afraid about. I didn't like the fact that I was afraid of it. It had like a control over me. I was a lousy athlete, not good with football, not built for basketball, or not great at team sports. But one day at the local pool, we were doing back dives, and by mistake, I pulled my legs back around and I did a back flip. And my friends went, wow. And I went, whoa. I found something that I could grab onto that was my own. And I became a good diver on the 1 meter springboard, the low board. I was like a 1 meter specialist. And then it came time for college, and colleges started to dangle scholarships in front of me. And they would eventually all get to that single most important question. Hey, Bill, you have a great 1 meter list of dives. Tell us about your high board list of dives. And I had never bothered to learn a high board list of dives because of my fear of heights. And then, with a coach that believed in my potential more than I believed in it, and who held me accountable to that potential because he could see the potential that I had, moved me into a zone of discomfort and helped me slowly, incrementally, get a high board list of dives. And I got a full scholarship to West Virginia University for all the time that I was there, and graduated as undergraduate from West Virginia University. And the guy who started out with a profound fear of heights traveled all around the world as a professional high diver. And this is how fear and risk can sometimes work. Fear is like a schoolyard bully that pokes you in the chest and says, hey man, you're afraid of me. What are you going to do about it? And then it becomes up to you. Do you walk away from this fear, or do you learn how to contend with it and move through it, which is really the definition of courage. acting despite the fact that you are afraid. Courage is not fearlessness. Courage is fearfulness. When you are being courageous, you are full of knee-knocking, teeth-chattering fear, but you're carrying on despite the fact that you are afraid. And being there at the top of that risk 1,500 times sort of helped me understand the cadence of risk. It sort of helped me understand this threshold that we get to. All of us have high dives to face in our career and our life, and they become decision points. Will I, won't I? Can I, can't I? Should I, shouldn't I? Get off this platform of safety, whatever that platform may be. But all of us face those platforms at times in our career. Risk-taking is really important to a thriving career. You know, all of the figures you see here on this iPod or iPhone are people that have taken gigantic risks. I'm going to share with you an example of a risk-taker that I've gotten to work with who has this great risk-taking ethos that she carries to her company. Does anybody know who this is? Who is it? Yes, I always hear, it's Spanx Lady. It is Spanx Lady. This is Sarah Blakely, the founder of a company called Spanx. And most of the women giggle at this point. A lot of the men are like, huh? What's Spanx? Spanx makes women shapewear made out of seamless lycra. And she actually invented the product. And now, last year, she was on the cover of Forbes magazine as the youngest self-made female billionaire. And I've worked with Sarah on 4 occasions. She wrote the foreword to my second book, a book called Courage Goes to Work. And she wrote the foreword to it. And Sarah's story is really kind of cool. She had invented this product because she needed the product. She wanted to have some of you may know the story better than me, some of you women especially. But she wanted kind of like a pantyhose, but that were Capri style. And so she figured out a way to make this happen, and she didn't want the girdle-like, rumples that come with a girdle. So she ended up working with manufacturers in North Carolina, begging them to manufacture her prototypes. They did, and then here's what she did. She took her little red backpack, which she talks about fondly in stories when she tells this story, and she would bring these prototypes, these early versions of her product, and she'd go to places like Neiman Marcus, and she'd put them on the store shelf. And then women would come by and they're like, this is exactly what I need. And then they go up to the counter and yes, okay, here we go. Well, it's not scanning. Let me try it again. Let me punch in the numbers. It's not coming up. I'm not sure. Let me get the manager. This is the 3rd time today that somebody has tried to buy this product. Well, maybe we ought to buy the product. Maybe we should order the product. She got the products on the shelves of Neiman Marcus by doing just that. That's moxie. That's a risk, right? And now she has this, billion-dollar enterprise because of the risks that she took in doing that. Here's what she says in the foreword to my book. She says, in every situation where I was ever afraid, but kept on moving, you could substitute the word courageous for the word afraid. I was afraid, i.e. courageous, when I started Spanx with $5,000 in savings. I was afraid, i.e. courageous, when I knocked on the doors of textile mills, begging them to manufacture my new footless pantyhose. I was afraid when I met with buyers and tried to convince them to sell Spanx products. And I was afraid the first time I was a guest on the Oprah Winfrey Show. She told me the story once that on Friday evenings, her dad would sit her and her brother down at the dinner table and ask the same question every Friday night. He'd say, okay, kids, what have you failed at this week? What have you failed at this week? She said she learned an important lesson that if you're not extending yourself to the point of failure occasionally, then you're not learning, you're not growing, you're not risking enough. And now she carries that ethos into Spanx. And it's made her quite an innovator. Here's another example. It's not somebody that I've worked with, but it's somebody that you know. Does anybody know who Jack Dorsey is? Come on now. It's in your demographic, people. This is the co-founder and co-inventor of Twitter, which is having its IPO today with a valuation of what? 14.2 billion. There's Justin Bellamy. He spoke at the last session that you had of this, and he's one of our entrepreneurs in the community and a good friend of mine. And he would know that this is the co-founder of Twitter. And not only has he co-founded Twitter, but he also is the inventor and founder of this company. You know what this is? This is Square. This dude wants to be the next Steve Jobs. He admires Steve Jobs. He loves the Beatles in the way that Steve Jobs loved the Beatles. And he had to give a pitch for Square. And in pitching to VCs, he came up with 140 reasons why they shouldn't invest in the company. 140 reasons, because he's really into this number, 140 for some reason. But he also gave them 10 reasons that they should invest. He identified, here's the risks of investing, but here's those gems that seem to be the bet worth placing. And then people invested in Square. And so far it's been successful. I'll bet you'll see it have an IPO as well. Let's take a look at what Jack Dorsey says about the idea of taking risks.
You talk about mistakes. I mean, anybody thinking of going out and starting a business or starting something on their own will make mistakes. Talk about how that is as an entrepreneur and how you can learn from that and not just see it as a failure.
Yeah, one of the best things about this country is that we have this personality and desire to keep getting back up. So we make mistakes, we get back up. And you look around the world at other places like France, and you just don't have that same sense, right? So one of the things I love is that we have this amazing ability to take big risks and not be afraid of making a mistake, not be afraid of failing, but just seeing as a step along the path, and that we will likely make better mistakes tomorrow and fewer mistakes tomorrow. But it's always a learning opportunity, and with every one of those, we need to recognize it. We need to stop. We need to say, why did that work? Why didn't it work? And then move on.
So he said, that they have to have an appetite for risk if he wants to be successful with his companies. I mean, risk is sort of what it's all about for an entrepreneur. And certainly if you're in, Silicon Valley or in the technology space or on the cutting edge of pretty much any new technology or even a new service innovation, you've got to have an appetite for risk and accept the fact that you will have some failures along the way too. And the predecessor to Twitter was a company called Odom, I believe. And it was a failure, but it led to the innovations that gave us Twitter. I'd like you to have another quick conversation, but we're going to do what I call a half-half. I want you to have a 2-minute conversation over here with this question. Relative to your career, in what ways are you playing it too safe? And if you're not in your career yet, maybe you know it about yourself. Where do you play it too safe? In what ways do you play it too safe? Have a 2-minute conversation on that. And then you all have a 2-minute conversation over here. What fears get in the way of you taking career risks? So I'll give you 2 minutes and I'll circle back. Part of my job is to interrupt really good conversations. So I must be the interrupter at this point. Hope you'll have had a meaningful conversation there. When I wrote my first book, Right Risk, I wanted to understand why did they get off the platform? Even though they were really afraid and they had the same fears that everybody else did, why did some people have this appetite to get off the platform, if you want to call that courage, and why did others not? And so that was really authors don't always write about what they know. They write about what they want to know, especially nonfiction authors. And so I wrote Right Risk because I had avoided risk so much in my life, but this one area of my life I had taken those high dives, and I kind of wanted to process it now, about 10 years after I had done the high dives. And it was a well-researched book, 80 research citations and such. And then I came across this gem of a book that kind of explained it for me, and it was called The Dangerous Edge by a guy named Dr. Michael Apter, who is a British fellow that teaches at many universities, including Georgetown and some other places. And so I reached out to Dr. Apter, because he had like the Rosetta Stone of me understanding risk-taking. I almost wanted to not write my book after I found his book. I'm like, well, here's the answer. Why do we need to have my book? So I reached out to Dr. Apter through email, and he was very kind, and he said, well, I accept your flattery, and I'm very honored that you would reach out to me, and anytime you'd like to, just feel free to give me a holler. Tally-ho. He didn't actually say tally-ho. That's my Britishness coming out. So he left his telephone number in the email, and I was like, I'm calling this dude. So I called him the next day. I'm like, Dr. Apter, you said that I could call you, so I'd like to know some more things about risk-taking. And I had this conversation with him, and again, he was so gracious, and he was really kind, and at the end of the conversation, he said, you seem to be very passionate about my work, Bill. He said, if you're ever up in the D.C. area, why don't you let me know, and we'll go out to dinner. And I said, well, that's awesome, Dr. Apter. Okay, goodbye, and hung up. I went home that night to my wife. I said, honey, this guy knows. He knows about risk-taking. I'm writing a book about risk-taking. I got to go see that guy. So I called him up the next day. I said, Dr. Apter, it's Bill Treasure again. Hey, remember how yesterday you said that I could come up and see you anytime? Well, I really want to do that. Can I come up this weekend and stay at your house? And he said, okay, sure. When you really want something, you got to take risks. You got to dog it down. I hopped on an airplane. It was like Odyssey, right? I'm like a Homer. I'm like going on my Odyssey here. And I'm in an airplane, and my wife is like, he might be a serial killer. He might have heads in a jar downstairs. You don't know. But I go up and see Dr. Apter to ask him about risk-taking and why some people do and because fear is the big issue. This whole group talked about the fears that get in the way of us taking a career risk. And most of us think of fear as the old Yerkes-Dotson model around arousal and performance. So, arousal and performance. Sorry if you can't see. Let's see. Make sure we can all get a look. But we kind of think of fear as, we need a certain amount of fear to be able to perform pretty well. But then it has diminishing returns and our performance goes down. So we need this fear arousal to feel some sense of there's some skin in the game and my sweaty palms are going, and I get aroused to the point that I'm actually now more focused and my senses are alive, and it's actually helping me take the risk, and I've got energy for it. But then we reach a point of diminishing returns. And this is how it's kind of commonly explained. It's the Yerkes-Dotson model. It was invented in 1908. You can Wikipedia if you'd like to. But Dr. Apter had a different take. He said, Bill, fear and excitement are very, very close together. What happens to you when you're really, really afraid physiologically? Tell me. Clammy hands. What else? Say? Your heart is racing. What else? Bad judgment. You could have bad judgment because of it. This is true of this physiological response. Your palms are sweating. You're panting. What else? You're really strong. Now here's the thing. These same physiological responses you have in intense fear, you have during sex. Really strong. Bad judgment. Yeah, it happens. It happens. Intense feelings of arousal associated with fear is a neurological correlate with intense arousal feelings of excitement. The only difference is that we experience fear as displeasure. We experience excitement as pleasure. Dr. Apter says, Bill, what if you could convert your feelings of displeasure into feelings of pleasure and convert fear into excitement? I said, well, then I'd probably want to take more risk. He says, that's right, you would, and you do. He said that so far as we know, mammals are the only living creatures that purposely seek out fearful situations in order to feel alive and excited. You go to a horror film to feel really, really afraid because it's exciting. You go on a roller coaster to feel really, really afraid because it's exciting. He said the reason that it's exciting is because of what he called a protective frame. That if you have a semblance of psychological safety, it will make you know that you can have confidence in this situation. So instead of trying to reduce the size of your fear, increase the size of your protective frame, which is your confidence, by doing things like getting coaching, by getting as much information about the risk as you can, by speaking to other people who have taken this risk before and been successful. All of these things increase your confidence and your protective frame. He described it as a tiger in the cage. Imagine you went to a zoo and saw a tiger roaming around with no cage. You'd be scared as hell and you'd want to run, and you should. You're going to get eaten up. But he said, what if you went to the zoo and saw a cage with no tiger? You'd be bored and you'd want your money back. You got to have both. You got to have the tiger, which is the metaphor for fear, and you have to have the cage, which is the metaphor for your protective frame. And then you can withstand greater intensity of fear as long as you're building greater intensity of confidence. And then this makes this neutral. It takes this piece and says it's not always about diminishing returns. Sometimes it's about making sure that you have a strong enough psychological protective frame to withstand the fear and carry it with you. Remember, courage is not fearlessness. It's carrying that fear with you, doing the thing that you're afraid of. So another way to look at this is what I would call purposeful discomfort. That we exist on a grand continuum that ranges from safety-seeking behavior on the one hand to opportunity-seeking behavior on the other hand. Most of us are willing to go out on this continuum in any given situation to some degree. And then we stop and we hesitate, and we're not going to go any further because we get too uncomfortable. What do you think we call this zone that we're willing to go out and then no further? Our comfort zone. Right. It's our comfort zone. If you're not in comfort, by definition, where are you? You're in discomfort. Good. You are students. Good students at that. If you're not in comfort, you're in discomfort. And here's the thing. Human beings and organizations, that is you as an individual, and collectives of people, organizations, don't grow, progress, and evolve in a zone of comfort. That's not where the growth is. You grow, progress, and evolve in a zone of discomfort. Not so far out into discomfort that you experience fight, flight, or freeze, the classic responses to fear, but enough outside of your comfort zone where you're getting the arousal and your palms are sweating and your eyes are dilating and your mouth is getting cotton mouth to let you know that you've moved into your courage zone. You could also think of it as your learning zone. So here's just a few examples of what that looks like in your career. Pursuing a job that eclipses your current skills. It is a risk and it is uncomfortable, and it will help you grow. Quitting a good job to start your own business, like these two fellas. That's a risk, and it's uncomfortable, but it can pan out. How about leaving a job before you've lined up another job? It's uncomfortable, but it's absolutely a risk. How about giving your boss a dose of tough upward feedback? Almost everybody bit their lip at some point when it came to talking to your boss. It's a risk, but it's a courageous action, and it could influence your career in a positive way if you do it in a positive way. How about moving to another geographic region on behalf of your job? All of these are small-scale risks, but important to a thriving career that you will be able to do it at some point in time. There are consequences. It's so important to be able to sometimes move into discomfort and put yourself in over your head that one of only about 17 people in the Fortune 500 who are CEOs who happen to be a woman, here's one, is Ginny Rometty. She's the CEO of IBM. And she says, comfort and growth don't coexist. You want to grow in your career? Get uncomfortable. Don't be searching for comfort. So now think back to the risk that you're considering in your own career. How uncomfortable does it make you? On a scale of 1 to 10, with 1 being, I'm pretty comfortable, and 10 being, I'm really uncomfortable, how uncomfortable is the risk that you're considering? I'll ask you two fellas, for your own business, how uncomfortable? What's the number?
Around 7.5.
About 7.5 in the discomfort. How about you?
Solid 8.
Solid 8, even a 9. That's pretty uncomfortable. So you have to decide, is the calibration for you worth taking? All right, I'm going to share with you a way that you might be able to do that. And it comes from my first book called Right Risk, 10 Powerful Principles for Taking Giant Leaps with Your Life. That is actually me on the cover of the book, on fire. I was Captain Inferno on the high diving team as well. Here's 5 criteria with which you can use when you're evaluating a risk. Too many times when we have a big risk that we're facing, what do we resort to? The pro and con list, right? I think it was invented by Abraham Lincoln in his autobiography. That's how old it is. You'd think that we would have evolved past that. I mean, it's useful, but it gets us only thinking about gain. What am I going to get? If I take this career move, what am I going to get? I'm going to get more money? What am I going to get? We only think about the get, but you have to think more than just the get. I think there's other dimensions that you need to think about when you're considering a career move. The first one, does it give you passion? Does it make you feel alive? Does it give you energy to consider this risk? Do you get excited in a good way? Or does it exhaust you? Does it make you so afraid that you get a pit in your stomach and you get the Sunday night blues? What kind, does it stir your passion in a way that's healthy and productive and exciting and generates energy or not? That's criteria number 1. Secondly, is it connected to some higher purpose that you're going after? A great risk should not be about compensation. It should be about destination. Not what will this risk get me, but where will this risk take me towards who I'm trying to become? Thirdly, it should be connected to some principles that you uphold or that you say you uphold and that now you need to embody. So if you tell me that you're somebody that you're really into creativity and that you're really into independence, and then you go get a government job that has no independence and no creativity, are you outside of your own value system? How about prerogative, the 4th criteria? Are you taking this risk because your dad told you he wants you to be a lawyer because that's what he was? Or are you taking this risk because it's of your own volition, of your own choice? Other people have given you all the consideration that they needed to, naysayers and yaysayers, and you push them aside. And is it you taking the risk on your own behalf, an exercise of your own free will, or because somebody else is pushing you off that platform? And then, after you've had the 4 P's, then go on to the 5th P, profit. What will this risk get me? What do I have to gain? And what do I have to lose? But that shouldn't be the first question. It should be the last question. I can't guarantee you that that will give you a 100% accurate risk and that it will be risk-free. And I can't guarantee you that you won't get hurt. But I will guarantee you that if you walk through that criteria and not just a pro and con list, you will increase the likelihood of a high probability of a good outcome. So you will increase your probability of a successful risk. Here's another couple of tips I want to share with you on personal risk-taking. The first one is answer the holy question. If you've got a pen, you might want to write this down. These are the 4 most important words you'll ever learn in the English language. What do you want? What do you want? What do you want? What do you want? That's not for somebody else to decide. You are the captain of your own ship and of your own career. No one will love your career as much as you. No one is responsible for your career as much as you. What do you want? If you can't decide with specificity and accuracy what it is that you want, you won't be able to get it, and nobody else will be able to help you get it. That question is a question of accountability, and it's entirely up to you. And a lot of people can tell you what they don't want, but going further, I mean, that's half the battle, knowing what you don't want. But going further and going deeper, what do I want? Then you can decide what's worth applying your courage towards. What risks are worth taking towards getting you to the end of what do you want? Second, dive in over your head. Do like Ginny Rometty did, and sometimes take on roles and jobs that eclipse your current skills as a way to grow. It's pretty much the best way to learn how to grow. Don't go so far out into the deep water that you might drown, but you got to be enough out into the deep water where you can bob up and down and maybe just barely touch the ground. And then finally, apply the theory of least regrets. The theory of least regrets. That is, ask yourself, what will I regret the least? Taking this risk and maybe wiping out. Or not taking the risk and never knowing if I could have been successful. When I declined that opportunity at Accenture and Anderson Consulting, it was because I didn't want to take the risk and then maybe wipe out and fail. But I couldn't live with the fact over time that maybe I could have been successful. That stuck in my craw. And it's ultimately what led me back to reapproach them about getting the job again. So now I'm going to open it up to a few questions, and then I've got just one or two things I'll do as I close it up. But I want to ask the questions first, and then I'll do the wrap-up. So let me ask you, what questions have surfaced for you so far during my presentation? Are you dumbfounded? You're like, man, this guy, he's like a full force. I don't know what to do with this information. There we go. Thank you. Bridget's got a question because I gave her 5 in case.
I'm actually really curious to know what you studied in school, and I think you mentioned something about organizational development.
Yes. I studied administrative science at the University of Wisconsin in Green Bay, and it had a track which was organizational development. This was my graduate studies, and I was the diving coach there, so that got paid for too at that school. So undergraduate was at West Virginia University, and I had a very worthless sports management degree because I couldn't be a PE teacher because I never took the certification to be a teacher, nor did I want to be one. And I couldn't go into the business world because I had focused on sports management, so I could basically run a health club. And I decided, after doing the high diving show, that I really wanted to. I actually got into the studies of leadership because I did such a poor job of leading people. And one of my divers came back and told me one day, he's like, you know, you're totally obnoxious. You're the worst boss I ever had. He's like, you talk to us like that every day, and I'm like this close to walking. And I thought about what he said, and I realized that he was right, that I wasn't me being a leader. I was me being my previous boss and the boss that I had before that, and ultimately I was being my dad. I was channeling my dad. I didn't know who I was as a leader, so I like, in leaning into him and trying to control him and the other divers, I was just me being my dad as the authority figure, right? So it got me thinking about leadership, and I started reading books on leadership and group dynamics, and I came across this term, organizational development. And I was chasing a girl at the time, and she lived up in Green Bay, Wisconsin, and they had a decent program up there, and you could carve it out the way that you wanted to. And administrative science was the formal master's degree, but the emphasis was organizational development. And my master's thesis was on leadership, but it was the impact of role ambiguity in a recently downsized environment and what leadership style would be most appropriate after a downsizing. And it turned out actually directive leadership, like my dad, would be very good in that kind of thing. Other questions that you might have? All right, yes?
What about risk when you have like other people involved, like you said, when it's your risk, but it's also other people's risk as well?
You know, we take different risks at different stages in our career and at different stages of our life. When I was in my mid-20s, I was immortal, and I could dive off a 100-foot platform. I wouldn't do that today. For one, I'm more fragile with my body, right? Like I'm 51 and my back doesn't like that kind of thing. But now when I take risks, so physical risks are not the risks that I would take today. And now, were I to take risks that I took in my 20s, it would not just impact me, it would impact my family. The interesting thing is we start to take risks early on in our career in pursuit, a lot of times, frankly, in the pursuit of the acquisition of more wealth. And then we start acquiring things and wealth and a 401k and some security. And once we've acquired, then we start taking risks or even avoiding risks to preserve the wealth that we have accumulated. So we take risks of a different fashion. When I got to 40 years old, I was no longer willing to be berated by controlling authority figures, like my dad and other people that I had then worked for. I'm 40 years old, man. I'm a grown man now. My hair's starting to get gray. I'm not going to take it anymore. Don't talk to me like that, right? So now I would assert myself in ways that I wouldn't below 40 years old. So you'll take risks in different stages in career in different ways, and you'll factor in, you'll have to, by the time you move up to 30, many people, probably most in this room, will have a spouse and probably children. And then the consequences of your risk will go beyond yourself. Good question. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to give some prizes. I'm going to ask 3 questions, and if you can be the first one to stand up with the correct answer, you will get 1 copy of one of my books. Are you ready? First question. Name 3 of the 5 Ps.
Prerogative, passion, and principle.
Okay, good. And you get a copy of Right Risk, 10 Powerful Principles for Taking Giant Leaps with Your Life. Good job. Terrific. Next one. What kind of frame did Dr. Apter theorize about? Protective frame. Come on up here. Yes. And you get Courage Goes to Work. Remember, the foreword is by Sarah Blakely. I don't know if you would fit into Spanx, but you could try. Nice job. Last question. What is the holy question?
What do you want?
Oh, look, it's the 2 entrepreneurs. You can share this book. This is Courage. This is now Leaders Open Doors. Let me just give you the 30-second advertisement for the book. I'm not making a penny on this book. 100% of the royalties of this book go to kids with special needs, to programs that support kids with special needs, partly because I have a kid with special needs. And the book is about creating opportunities for others. And when you're in a leadership role, that's what you should be doing, is opening doors for other people. I wanted the book to embody its own message. You'll see the cards on the table. I would invite you to go out to Amazon and buy a hard copy of the book that's also on soft copy. But you, my friend, after you're done reading it, help him read it too, and then you will both start your successful careers and come back to me and I will invest in your company so you could be the next Square person. Good job. And then feel free to get in contact with me. These are the ways. Be treasurer at giantleapconsulting.com. Also go to Leaders Open Doors. There's some videos that you can view out there and such. Twitter me on at Bill Treasurer. Join me on LinkedIn. Join me on Facebook. Like me and like my company. That'd be awesome if you would do that. One last story for you. I ended up getting that job with Accenture, and then fast forward 6 years after working for Accenture, I got to that another decision point, another platform of safety. I had started to become confined. I realized that my premier values are independence and creativity. And here I was stuck in a cubicle like it was a Dilbert cartoon, confined, selling portions of my soul every single day. And I had just written a book on risk-taking. And I sat down with a counselor friend of mine and I said, you know, I'm really stuck whether to leave Accenture and I don't know how to. I got this good 6-figure income and I want to start my own job and my own career and I think I could do it, but I'm kind of afraid whether I could do it or not. And she said, Bill, why don't you read your own book on risk-taking? And I was like, oh, that's not a bad idea. I took that risk. I started my company, Giant Leap Consulting, over 11 years ago. I'm in the courage building business. Today I'm going to go and work with NASA tomorrow. Next Friday I'm going to Abu Dhabi. I've traveled all around the world living in my passion space because somebody convinced me to live my value system. And that's what it's all about. Be congruent with your value system. Know what your values are at the deepest level. Know what your principles are at the deepest level. And then take the risks that will honor your own principles and your own values. And that's the thought that I'd like to leave you with. Thank you so much for letting me be part of your day.